Welcome back to a Celtic State of Mind. It's a Tuesday afternoon. I'm Paul John Dykes, and today we've got the full squad. It's James McKenzie, Liam Carrigan, and Lawrence Connolly. Now, James, you took a much-deserved week off last week. I thought you were going to transmit. You weren't going to transmit. What were you up to?
Nah, I went down to London. I went down south for wireless. I didn't really have a week off. The day I was supposed to do the podcast, and the Tuesday I was pouring pints in a bar. So the graft was still getting put in. But it's interesting. I'm back in the sort of contributor seat rather than the hosting seat. It's a lot less comfy this seat than the one in the studio, but it should be good fun.
Listen, this is always welcome. This seat is always welcome if you want to give me a wee break, and I'm sure many of the listeners would welcome that because I got loads of great feedback. There is loads to talk about, guys. We'll come back to the old transmit thing because it's a festival I've never been to, and I'm wanting to know, what do you think in the comments? Has Tina Park ever really been replaced? Because Tina Park was my era. I'll be coming to Liam and Lawrence and asking you guys your memories of that. A wee bit before your time, James, I'm guessing, Tina Park?
Yeah, I think even the first transmit it was about 2015 maybe, so it's just before my time.
Wow. 2015, believe it or not, I'll come to you first, Liam, was the year in which Sajid Haksabanovic made his debut over in Sweden for Halmstad. He was 15. He was a child prodigy. And within 2 years, he had a big money move to West Ham United. At that time, Slaven Bilic was the manager, and he was replaced in November by Davy Moyes. He played 2 first-team games for West Ham in that first season. And in season 2 and 3, he was loaned out to various teams, playing his football in Spain, back in Sweden, before he got a permanent move to Norrköping. Then he went to Rubin Kazan, and then we got him on the cheap due to the political situation over there. And he is one of 4 players, Liam, that I have named as being Ange Postecoglou's second season signings, who I think will do well for Brendan Rodgers. What's your thoughts on Haksabanovic?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think he's very much a Brendan Rodgers type of player. He's a project player because you know he's got the skills, you know he's got the flashes of absolute brilliance, but at the same time, we never quite figured out exactly how to deploy him to his most effective last season. Jota going opens up a wee gap in the team there. So whether it's a case of playing him where Jota played or rejigging the forward line to accommodate what we call the classic number 10, which I think is probably Haksabanovic's best position, we'll wait and see. But I think he's a guy that, along with Maeda, is a guy who I think Rodgers could really work with and improve and better utilise in the team.
Mm-hmm. No, I was thinking about it yesterday. I was writing a blog on Acsom.net in and around some of the players who we might have got those glimpses from last season, Liam. And I think we did from Haksabanovic. And then I was thinking back, James, to how Brendan Rodgers uses his wingers. Now, obviously, I'm talking mainly around his time at Celtic, and I'm thinking of Paddy Roberts cutting inside. Skit Sinclair used to like cutting inside. I think that would probably suit Haksabanovic a wee bit more than hitting the byline, getting the crosses over. But like Liam, I'm not sure he's a winger. I don't think he's got the pace for it.
Yeah, he's had a sort of really confusing time at Celtic so far, Sajid Haksabanovic. I'm always really wary of players who they perform well in glimpses, but you never get it over a full 90. Because if you're not getting it over a full 90, how are you going to get consistent performances over the full course of a season? It doesn't really sort of add up. Where his best position is through the middle, I don't think, have we seen him through the middle in a Celtic shirt yet, Haksabanovic?
The best game I've seen him playing was against Dundee United back in November, where he ended up getting the Player of the Month that campaign. A lot of his play was through the middle, but I'm not sure that's where he was playing, to be honest with you, James. I think he was just roving that day, full of confidence.
Yeah, it's whenever he put in a good performance coming off the bench. I think was it Dundee he got the brace against earlier back in November. It was a really good performance then. I think they had a good performance around March time before we played against Hearts in the game in the Scottish Cup. And then when he eventually got that start, a really anticipated start, he didn't really perform to the abilities that we knew he could. And that's just sort of a consistent theme so far from him. So we know that Rodgers is well known for his man management. We know that if a player needs a change of direction or perhaps even a change in style to suit their play a bit more, Rodgers can be the man to supply that. And we'll see if Haksabanovic can be one of Rodgers' key players, because Celtic need a return on investment. They did pay that money from, and as he mentions, a couple of those second season players that we need to see a return on investment in that we haven't seen yet.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the other three that I named, and you can agree and disagree, please do so in the comments. Ladies and gents, where Big O, I think he's going to be really suited to Brendan Rodgers' style play. I'm harking back to his first time at Celtic, of course, when we played mainly Dembele and Edouard, as well as wee Lee Griffiths, now plying his trade at Mandurah FC, who are so low down in the Australian football tier that you can't get their stats to see if he's scoring any goals. And then the other players are Iwata, who, again, I've liked the look of Iwata, other than when he played that first game at centre-half. I think it was against St Mirren, Liam, wasn't it? He had a torrid time against St Mirren. And then I think he played pretty well in the cup final, albeit against lower league opposition. And, of course, the fourth player, one of your favourites, Lawrence, is Alistair Johnston. And he's a no-brainer because we know that he's got it. But I think he's going to be better suited not playing it as an inverted fullback, if indeed Rodgers decides to do away with the inverted fullbacks. What's your take on those four, Lawrence? Can you see them coming to fruition almost, or getting our money's worth out of them in next season under Brendan Rodgers?
Well, on Haksabanovic, I suppose I don't think he's got speed to play as a winger for Rodgers, but see him in the Tom Rogic position, where Rodgers used to deploy Tom Rogic. Could see him maybe through there, possibly get more joy out of him there. As you said, Johnston. I think he's a huge upgrade in Juranovic. Whether it's inverted or more traditional, I think he'll perform both roles well. Rodgers had toyed with inverted fullbacks at Leicester, so I don't expect it to be done away with altogether. I'm sure that he's been studying the videos, seeing what systems will best suit who he's got just now. Iwata, I think, he's possibly the best midfielder at the club, I think, Iwata. Stop deploying him at centre-half, get him into midfield.
Do you think he's better than O'Reilly and Hatate?
Midfield look like, who knows, mate?
Well, that's a bold statement, because I think that's the strongest area of our team, the midfield. And obviously, there's a couple of midfielders in the tagline there. We're going to be talking about improved deals on O'Reilly, Hatate, and potentially Carter Vickers. Am I hoping for too much today? Probably. People are reading into everything that's happening from the social media team because there was 2 empty blocks on the loading screen. That means we're going to announce another 2 long-term deals with our players. Of course it does. We're getting bored during the pre-season looking at every nuance on the social media. Double denim, we will be talking about Jota as well. Definitely would like to see Hatate and Carter Vickers commit to new deals. O'Reilly, I'd like to see stay, but want a few more goals from him this season. That really was what was missing last time round for O'Reilly, Liam, wasn't it? I mean, people look at last season and think that maybe it wasn't as good, but I thought his performances were there when you look at it. And if he's fit, he played for Ange Postecoglou.
Well, the stats show that his assist ratio was very, very high. I think he might have had the highest number of assists of any player on the team, actually. So, there's more to being a good midfielder than just scoring goals. And I think O'Reilly proved that last season. He kind of flew under the radar a bit last season because everyone was raving about Hatate, who I think had an excellent season overall, although he faded a wee bit towards the end. Callum McGregor is just Callum McGregor. He's just, you know what you're getting with him, and it's always a 9 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10 every week. I think O'Reilly just kind of flew under the radar a wee bit, but I thought he had a very solid season. I thought he did well.
Yeah, he did. I'll be talking about O'Reilly because he is one of the players that's on the tagline there. But seeing how you mentioned McGregor, one of the other midfielders, James, I'll come to you first on this. He signs a 5-year deal. We spoke about it, Kevin and I, yesterday. It's a massive boost, obviously, on the back of Kyogo and Maeda signing these contracts as well. It shows that these people are buying into whatever Rodgers is selling them. But it's also, in the pre-season, you're looking for new guys in. We know that there's areas of that squad that we want to strengthen, James. But these are massive positive developments as well when the club captain pens a new 5-year deal. I was talking yesterday about how he'd been at the club for 20 years, which is just frightening. If he continues in this vein in terms of the consistency of performance, it could be right up there in the top 5 Celtic appearances throughout the club's history. And I just think at this point, are we now approaching potentially the peak of McGregor? Has he already hit that? I mean, I think he could develop even further under Rodgers.
Yeah, I've said a few times on the podcast, I think he's been playing his best football under Ange the sort of last 2 years. And we know the connection that Rodgers and McGregor had, so much so that Rodgers tried to take McGregor to Leicester with him. They have such a tight-knit bond together there, and those two working together for Celtic, it's only going to be even better. But just on the transfer window, I don't know if I'd be hoping that we'd be doing things a bit quicker, if that's just the fact that a player's left for £25 million and the most we've spent on a player was around £2.5 million. I don't know if I'm just wanting us to speed things up a bit, perhaps get a big signing in fairly soon, but it seems like Celtic are just building the foundations at the moment of how Rodgers is going to have this team working, tying down the players that are going to be the key parts and play the key cogs in this future Celtic team, because we've already lost one of them. I'd imagine Jota was going to play a massive part in Brendan Rodgers' plan, so he's just getting these players tied down and ensuring they're at the club for next season. I think perhaps a bit later on in the window we'll start spending a bit more of the money.
Yeah, this is the thing, because we already had a nice wee bounty to chip away at, and then obviously Jota leaves the building. There might be a few other payments coming in for sell-ons for the likes of Frimpong and Tierney down the line. But this is as important, Lawrence, to get all your ducks in a row, to get McGregor, the club captain, right behind Rodgers and what we're doing. And obviously he's signed up for the 5 years, which would suggest he's going to end his career. We know that anything can happen in football, but it looks as though he's going to be a one-club man. Yesterday after the show, Lawrence had made comments around the captaincy of Celtic. And before making the comments, I did state unreservedly that Paul McStay was, in my mind, the maestro. And I wasn't saying McGregor was a better player, absolutely not. But I think he's a better captain. And, I've had some feedback on that saying, yeah, but it's a lot easier to captain a winning side. Well, he took the captaincy when we weren't a winning side, didn't he? I think he's been phenomenal in the last 2 years, as James says. Can he get better under Rodgers?
Oh, he can undoubtedly get better under Rodgers, but, he taking the captaincy after a bad season, but, we've been the dominant team this century. Far and away with most dominant teams. So I think, when Paul was captain, it was perhaps a harder time for the club. And through those years, a lot rested on guys like Tom Boyd, John Collins, Peter Grant, Paul McStay. Some of the players we were signing at the time were maybe not a standard of player you'd ever thought you'd have seen a Celtic shirt. Wayne Biggins and guys like that.
Try to tell me you didn't rate Wayne Biggins, Lawrence?
No, he wasn't one of my favourite players. Mate.
I remember I got him to sign my programme. We were playing St Johnstone, midweek game. Might have been his debut. I'd need to check the wiki. I got him to sign the programme.
Sure he didn't go for the programme and sign your hand?
Probably missed, He probably did.
Listen, getting players signed up is brilliant. I mean, you can only imagine the uproar if you'd let two of your stars walk away and feed them a contract. What would the papers be saying? Be slaughtering us.
Oh, they would. And by the way, can I just make a point, Lawrence? You're talking about the dark old days. Absolutely, they were completely different times. But one player that I don't like being thrown into the mix when we're talking about, Wayne Biggins and all the guys is Willie Faulkner, because I remember singing the song "Ooh Ah Willie Faulkner."
Remember that pre-season goal against Brazilians at Hampton from
Flamenco?
Oh yeah, just inside at the half. Oh, what a goal!
They had a left winger called, was it Savio?
Yeah, we ended up going to Real Madrid. McCann went all out to sign him. He just couldn't get it over the line, could he?
Tom Boyd, I'll tell you what, he gave him a torrid night. Those were the dark old days. Talking of dark old days, you're wearing the dark Celtic kit there, Lawrence. I can see that there. Have you gone for long sleeves, short sleeves, sponsorless?
Short sleeves, mate, with the sponsor on it. It just popped over to the shop at the weekend. Tell you what, see that home shirt, mate. I hated it when I saw pictures of it. Now I've seen it in the flesh.
James knows what's coming. James knows what's coming.
In the flesh, I think it's decent.
Stop it, right? Honestly you're being brainwashed.
I'm starting to believe when I was at the airport.
You're ganging up on me, lads.
I saw it in the JD Sports, and I was like, you know what?
It looks pretty
good,
Yeah, it looks good.
Yous are at it. You two are at it. Liam, I've still got your back up on this.
Liam's not seen it in the flesh yet.
Is it 3-1?
I'll see it in the flesh next week, and I'll make my final decision then.
By the way, right, it doesn't matter because we had some cracking strips in the 90s and we never won anything, right? So, at the end of the day, it matters at the end of the season as to what trophies that you win. I totally get it, right? But my football jersey anorak, so, humour me. I know, humour me on that, right? Liam, on that note, what are you wearing today? What is that?
This is the Japan. I think it's either the third kit or a training shirt. I'm not sure, but it's it's some form of Japan national team shirt, but I'm not exactly sure of the status of it. But it's got a really nice wee on the back of the neck. There is what looks like a 5-leafed clover, but is actually like I believe it's a sakura flower, which is like a Japanese emblem. But it looks like a clover with 5 leaves. So
nice, looks good.
White, there's a clover on it. That'll do me.
Absolutely. What's your take on the McGregor signing? It's huge. Something like that is huge. And although it's pre-season, we're all getting excited about bringing in new players, Liam. This is as important as signing a new player, I would suggest.
I keep going back to it, but the day that Rodgers became manager, I said that my biggest concerns were that he was going to break up the team and he was going to pivot back to signing also runs from the English leagues. We have tied down 2 of our Japanese stars, and we've tied down our captain, and we're still looking at, we've signed another player from the Asia Pacific region in Marco Tilio. So the signs are that the progress that was started under Ange is going to continue and, if anything, accelerate under Brendan Rodgers.
Yeah.
We talk about statement signings. Those 3 contract announcements are statements, in my opinion. Absolute statements. Because you better believe those guys will be on plenty of money if they've signed up for that length of time.
Well, there was talk, Liam, wasn't there, around interest? I don't know if, obviously, it filtered through to Japan. You were talking about the fact that if something is reported over there, it's because there is good source material. Kyogo, there was some interest apparently from the Bundesliga. Last season, we heard interest from the EPL for Maeda. So they 2 guys, obviously, the vultures are circling, and for more, hence the tagline today. Can we get some more players signed down on contracts? It's only a matter of time before people are saying, never mind the new contracts, where's my new signing? Because that's what happens on the socials. Here we go, Sneds, 1967. Afternoon, folks. More hoping for big signing at the minute than sorting those 3. Yeah, I get that. I totally get it, because it's that season, really. It's a close season. And Celtic are, during this week, off to a Portuguese training camp where Brendan Rodgers is looking to get them even fitter, James. He's talking about his brand of attacking aggressive football. That's twice he said that now. But he reckons he can take them up a level physically. He was talking about that. And when you look at Hatate and even O'Reilly, they look as though they've been working out already over the course season. They look in great shape. 2 games, first one tomorrow, and then on Saturday against the same side, Portimonense. We're not going to see it, though, because they're not being televised, unfortunately.
Yeah, Rodgers, he done something similar in his first spell at Celtic, taking that Dyla team, a team that had sort of rejected Rory Dyla's philosophies and turned them into the absolute treble-winning machines that they went on to become. And we know how fit the team is that Ange already has. They go gung-ho for the full 90 minutes, or even if they can't do the full 90 minutes, we do sometimes concede some late goals. We do always score late goals as well. But I don't know if what Brendan's saying is he wants the team to be even more aggressive and even more sort of gung-ho than what Rodgers' team was, and if he's going to try and get them to be a bit more smarter about how they sort of use their energy in these games, because there's going to be periods, especially in the Champions League, there's going to be periods where you have to attack, there's going to be periods where your back is going to be against the wall. And just truth be told, Celtic can't go gung-ho in the Champions League against Real Madrid because they're fitter than us and they're better than us, and chances are over the course of the game, as you saw in the 3-0 game at Celtic Park, we started to tire out, and that's where they got us. So if Rodgers can teach us to sort of conserve our energy a bit more, it could be a bit better for Celtic in the Champions League especially.
Yeah, you know this, James, you're right. And I think last season, we spoke about it on the bulletins and on the match days as well. And even domestically near the end of the season, Lawrence, there were occasions. I mean, I'm thinking St Mirren, when you're coming up against Curtis Main, who I think has been freed by St Mirren. I don't know if he's signed for a new club. He could have scored 4 goals against us. Is he signed up somewhere else, James? I'll have a look at that. He could have scored 4 goals that afternoon. He scored 2 and he bullied us. And so when I'm hearing that Brendan wants us to be attacking and more aggressive, you know, that's music to my ears, because we cannot be bullied, in particular on the European stage as well.
Was it Brendan that brought in Jim McGuinness as a football coach? The former Donegal manager? You know, the Gaelic boys tend to be a bit fitter, a bit more robust. You know, we might need that. I see across the city, it seems to be, you know, you've got to be 6 foot plus to get signed. You know, I don't know what style of football they'll be going for, but it's something we might need, because, you know, in games we have looked lightweight. You know, we've said that in midfield we could do with a bit more. You know, Alistair Johnston seems to be the boy that's a bit more aggressive that we could do. I think the team lacks it a bit. You know, someone like Wanyama in midfield. You know, but so maybe that's what he's talking about as well. Getting more easily able to handle kind of the aggressive tactics they need to face against us. So
big thing, Lawrence.
Against that.
Just going to clarify this, because people will say you've just told us to sign Wanyama. That's not what you were saying. You're saying the Wanyama type of player.
Yeah,
big, strong, Wanyama, aggressive.
Yeah. His time's long gone, isn't it, with us? Yeah. Great as he was for us. You know, what signing? Remember we signed him? I thought, what was signing our midfielder for?
I remember we played Partick Thistle in a bounce game at Firhill, and Isa Giri was coming back from a broken leg that day, and Wanyama was there, and he was just standing at the dugout, and they were not prepared for the Green Brigade and everybody to turn up that day. The place was absolutely mobbed for Hull, because it was one of these games. I think it was maybe announced a few days before. I remember it was probably even pre my usage of social media. I just seen it on the Celtic FC website. It was, you know, that period of the pre-season or whenever it was. Great day, really, really sunny, and I decided that day I'd never wanted to see Morten Rasmussen ever wear a Celtic jersey again. He was horrendous. What do you make of this then, Liam? Obviously, it's not just about buying guys with the height, as Lawrence was saying there. It's more about that aggression. I think there's a bit of an aggression in Iwata. I liked when Iwata played in midfield against Rangers last season. I thought we've seen a bit of that bite that might be missing from some of our more creative flair players. And do you think it is something that was missing from Angie's team last year?
At times, yes. I think we are noticeably more fragile when Captain Carter-Vickers isn't playing.
Yeah.
The whole unit just seems more fragile when he's not there. So I think if we are going to make a big signing soon, I would hope it's another centre-back of his calibre, of his physique, and his ability. But midfield, no, I think Iwata can fill that role. People keep saying, you know, it's not... I don't blame them, because they have the archetype of a Japanese player in their mind, and Kyogo fits that archetype, right? But they think that Japanese players are small and slight. If I'm not mistaken, Iwata's 6 foot. And he's a big bit of a boy. He's muscular. He can throw himself into a tackle, and he is potentially as physical as somebody like Victor Wanyama in his prime. So I think he has the potential to really fulfil that role, if that is what Rodgers is going to be looking for. If we do go with the 2 holding midfielders, as was suggested in Europe, McGregor and Iwata are just tailor-made for that, in my opinion.
It will be interesting to see. I was impressed. He's another one of these Ange second season signings that I'm tipping to have a good season under Rodgers. We've got to watch what we do in Acsom, because Kev Graham last week was tipping Adam Montgomery to be an absolute legend, and 40 minutes later he signed for Fleetwood. But that's what you do. You put it out there. If there is any breaking news in relation to new deals or new signings, let us know in the comments section. If you want to comment, all you need to do is subscribe to the channel on YouTube. It's absolutely free. Whilst you're in there, give us a thumbs up as well, because you do get a few prowlers and trolls and all that coming in just to give you a thumbs down. Don't know why on earth they would like to do that, so you can counteract that. We've been linked James, to a number of players. I know you'll be keeping your ear to the ground on this, but one that caught my notice yesterday, caught my attention, was Donny van de Beek. Some people think that's a non-starter due to probably the price range. We're looking probably at a loan if you were to try and get him in. Celtic have been noted as having an interest by a publication who are also online, and obviously the minute that's happened, every single Celtic blog has reported on it, which is understandable. It would pique your interest, of course you would, when you look at where he's been and who he plays for and what level he's played at. Is he the type of player that we should be looking at?
Well, he'd be an absolutely phenomenal signing, first of all. When you think of the Ajax team that got to the Champions League semi-final about 4 years ago, he was one of the key players. I remember, I think it was even the semi-final in the first leg of Spurs they had, it was him that put them in front and had them leading in the tie. He was one of the main men, and he was one of the guys that ended up leaving for big money, but he's just not really worked out at Manchester United, and I've got no idea why. Just constantly been on the bench. And even with the Manchester United manager coming in, Ten Hag, who worked with him at Ajax, he's not been able to get a tune out of him. He's completely a blind item. He's really had a loan spell at Everton. I can't remember if that was last season or the season before, and that didn't work. So if Manchester United and Van de Beek are looking at it as he needs to take a step below Everton, then you're looking at perhaps either going back to Ajax or coming to a team like Celtic. And he's shown that he can perform in a team that is expected to dominate their league, which I always think is something that you've got to be looking at when you're looking at a player that's going to come and join Celtic. Can they play well as a team that's going to be on the front foot the entire of the game and they're going to be dominating? And Van de Beek has shown that. I don't think it's realistic at all, to be honest with you, but you can dream, can't you? We've got Brendan Rodgers in. We'd like to think our sort of transfer scope is going to be a bit wider now. So, yeah, we'll be hoping perhaps might see Donny van de Beek on. It'll definitely be a loan deal if he's going to come in. But yeah. I'd love to see him.
I mean, what was the fee? What was the fee when he went to Man U? It was over 30 million, wasn't it?
It was 30, 40, something like that.
Yeah.
It wasn't massive money, but still big money.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the things, that maybe Man U and Donny van de Beek's looking at is Rodgers' reputation for revitalising players. Look, look what he'd only Scott Sinclair and come up first time round. Maybe they're looking at it and saying, well, actually, who could get him back into some kind of form that, Man United can then either sell him or play him.
There's two things there, Lawrence, right? Now, James obviously is being balanced there by saying that there's, it would be a coup and a half if we were ever to get a player like this. And this comes down to, by the way, as a Celtic fan, I don't think anybody should ever be out of reach, but in the modern game, that's exactly what's happened because it comes down to the finances. But when you start looking at some of these reasons for it being a good idea for a player, Lawrence, that is definitely one of them, isn't it? The Brendan Rodgers appeal. And also the fact that you can offer him, if he's going to be a player that's going to be getting games, you can offer him that platform in the Champions League as well. I don't think it's going to be something that will happen, I've got to say. But there are selling points there, isn't there, Liam? I mean, there are selling points for big, high-profile players. You called them statement signings. The other week I was calling them marquee signings. Is it necessary even to bring in a player of that kind of calibre, that level?
I don't know. My mind's kind of wandering now because you said coup and a half, and I'm suddenly thinking, what's Morelos doing? Anyway, but no, I don't know if it's necessary to spend that kind of money. But if you want to excite people and put the frighteners up your rivals, then that's the way to do it. You look back to the Martin O'Neill season when he brought in Chris Sutton. That was a statement, not just a striker, but an international class striker, a Premier League winning striker, if you remember, with Blackburn. And he was an absolute revelation, and something like that. But at the same time, I really don't think that we should go back to the days where we're spending 7, 8, 9 million on one player. I just think when you look at we've got guys like Kyogo and Hatate, O'Reilly. We've got these players by exploring, shall we say, markets that are less utilised and less exposed, and therefore less inflated. Van der Beek's a fantastic player, but I would imagine that if we did our research, you might find somebody still in the Dutch league who might potentially be as good.
Well, this is the thing. This is the thing, because that profile, Liam, is huge. But we have found a successful way, and even when we need to push the bar up to a CCV or a Jota, we've found a way to bring in players that is working for us. So why completely tear up that rule book, that recruitment rule book, and go all out because you want to make a statement? And what I'm asking there, and I think you've answered it perfectly, and I agree with you. We don't really need to make that statement, but because you're in that frenzied period of the pre-season, everybody wants the news. They want a signing. It's only a matter of time before anything, like for example, today, right? So Charlie Tully was born on this day. Today, back in 1924. So, next week, if we're going to say, ex-Celtic Charlie Tully was born on this day, all you're going to get in the comment section is announce a new signing. That's all you're going to get, because people get into a frenzy. But yeah, I think we just got to be patient. I think we've just got to stick to our recruitment strategy, because it's definitely worked. You were talking about opponents being quaking in their boots. I want to talk about an opponent now, James, in Heart of Midlothian. And yesterday, reading the news that in terms of the allocation, they're going to be cutting that for Celtic next season. Now, obviously, they're following suit, because we are in a situation with Rangers at Ibrox whereby no away fans will be going to Ibrox and vice versa at Celtic Park. It's kind of opened the floodgates for Hearts to do likewise. I mean, I seen yesterday Kevin was talking about the thought process behind it with Hearts, because there's empty seats when we play them at Tynecastle. You could then point towards the atmosphere, the spectacle, what this is actually doing to the dynamic of Scottish football, when potentially there's going to be 2 fixtures next season that there'll be no away fans at. Because I'm guessing that if Celtic are offered 650 or 700 tickets to Tynecastle next season, James, they will respond in the same way they did to the Ibrox allocation.
Yeah, you'd have to imagine Celtic would point forward that it's only right. I never know how to think about these ticket debates. As someone who doesn't go to as many games as a lot of people in the comments would, I mean, I have some of the same opinions, but I look at sort of both sides of the coin for Hearts' decision. First of all, there's the financial way of looking at it. If they're not going to sell some of their tickets, give Celtic some of them, then you've got to look at the competitive aspect as well. We've got to try and balance both things. If Hearts are looking at, we always talk about how teams in Scottish football, they aren't competitive enough. They lack ambition. They lack the drive to try and push up and try and challenge a Celtic or a Rangers. But then we get a lot of complaints when they try and make things more competitive by creating a sort of stronger home advantage at their stadiums. It's very interesting. I'd like to see what the comments would think about it. Someone who doesn't go to the games, I don't have the strongest opinion on it, but there's 2 sides looking at the coin, the financial and the competitive sort of aspects of it. I'd like to see what Lawrence and Liam think of it.
Yeah, definitely. Because the way I look at it, Lawrence, right, and it's not from a selfish perspective, right, because we have spoken about, the teams who decide not to give us another stand, for example, and then you go to the game and there's loads of empty seats. And that sounds like, for me, that's just a bad business decision. But let's talk about Scottish football, the strength of Scottish football. And a massive strength is in its support. It's such a well-supported league, and we see reports throughout the season from people who monitor the amount of people that attend Scottish football games, and they compare them to other European leagues. We're a really well-supported league. And, there's 2 clubs now who are going to be affecting that spectacle and the atmosphere at, potentially 8 games now next season, because Celtic will obviously return the favour, I'm pretty sure, if they go down the same route that they did with Rangers. What's your thoughts on it, Lawrence?
Listen, I think, the league should be regulating how many away tickets starters, not a reasonable amount, not a phrase that means nothing, you know what I mean? Put a number on it. Hearts have come out and said, it's due to ticket demand. I get that there's sometimes empty seats when we play them, but if they've been sold to season tickets, who knows? They also don't need to run, or any football club doesn't need to be run for the benefit of Celtic other than Celtic. So, if they think it's going to be better for them, it's up to them if they think it gives them a better chance of getting points. Let's be honest. And James spoke about them challenging us. Hearts tried that and it almost went bust and died, but obviously their fans stepped up to the mark and saved them. So if it is for fan demand, that they are selling out season books. You can hardly blame them for that. But there's definite problem with the league not mandating, teams should get away tickets or how many they should get. But there's also the safety aspect. I know it hasn't been the safest ground for a manager's Tynecastle.
No.
So will they be able to keep the reduced numbers safe? I don't think it's been as many instances as Ibrox with supporters getting pelted with stuff, but we'll see if they can keep it safe. Maybe Hearts are looking and hoping we do take, no tickets, save them in policing costs.
The thing with that as well, Lawrence, you're talking about, and I don't fully disagree with this, we only need to look after Celtic. Absolutely, right? But if Celtic took the same kind of stance on this one, Liam, if you think about it, we just announced that we've sold out our season tickets for the 8th season running. There is a huge demand. There's a waiting list. I've seen various figures, but there's a huge waiting list. Now, if the figures are what I've seen, we could sell out every single seat to season ticket holders. We could do that and just think, we're just to look after Celtic. We're not interested in a spectacle. We're not interested in the traditions of football, which for over 100 years have meant that there are two sets of fans supporting their team, home and away. What's your take on it, Liam?
I touched on this actually in one of the blogs I wrote last week for the Acsom.net. In Japan, the J League regulate all this, as Lawrence touched on a minute ago. Mm-hmm. Prices are standardised across the entire league. Away ticket allocations are the same across the entire league. Well, the same proportion, the same percentage of the stadium. Basically, behind one of the goals is always the away end. Mm-hmm. That's the way it is. No matter what stadium you go to, whether you go to see my local Matsumoto Yamaga, whose average gate is about 4,000, or you go to see, Urawa Reds or Yokohama Marinos, who routinely get 35,000, 40,000. It's the same. About 10% is away supporters. And the other thing is pricing uniformity, mm-hmm. because it's a two-way street here. You get fans of clubs, and I'm just plucking names. This is nothing against these clubs in particular, right? You get clubs like Aberdeen, St Johnstone, Ross County. Bit of a trek to come to Celtic Park already. They've got to pay a fair bit in travel costs to get there, and then they end up paying over what they think is over the odds for the ticket as well. If you have regulated pricing across the entire league, they'll pay the same to watch their own teams as they will to watch them at Celtic Park. And it also means that when we go to Pittodrie or Tannadice or Tynecastle, we cannot get price gouged like we do now. I really detest the idea that two fans are paying different amounts to watch the same game just because of the colour of shirt they're wearing. I think that absolutely stinks, and it is something that should be regulated out of existence. Well,
it's one of these ones I think that we will continue to discuss. I'm sure there'll be comment from Celtic. I've got to say I've enjoyed games where I've gone to Celtic Park and it's exclusively Celtic fans that have been here. I think the atmosphere was tremendous. The flip side of that, I thought the game, which was pretty much meaningless, where we've gone to Ibrox and they beat us, the atmosphere was bizarre. Obviously, I'm just watching it on the telly. I wasn't at the game, but I thought the atmosphere was really flat. And if there's a spectacle to a particular game or a derby, and that is being affected by the away support not being there, then you would expect authorities to be strong, but they never are in this country, are they, Lawrence? Really, when it comes to Scottish football, let's talk a wee bit then, James, about the tagline, right? Because on our WhatsApp group, as often happens, if there's a wee cryptic social media post from Celtic, it'll get shared about. And the feeling was there's a wee loading screen with 5 bars, 3 of which were already full, which we're taking to be Maeda, Kyogo and McGregor, with 2 remaining. Perhaps we're going to announce another 2 new deals. I've actually put 3 in there because I'm greedy and I want O'Reilly, Hatate and Carter Vickers. If it is indeed another couple of current players signing new deals, will that give us an idea, James, of this potential second body that will be leaving the building this summer?
No, we've all mentioned how important continuity is, especially when a new manager's coming in. Although we've seen Brendan Rodgers at Celtic before, the team is completely different. The landscape of the club is completely different. It's in a better place than where it was when he left it in the first place. So it's all about him, as I mentioned earlier, laying down the foundations and assessing the squad first before we actually get out and spend the big money. It's all about patience, as he said. And tying down guys like Kyogo, guys like Cal McGregor, guys like, surprisingly, Dies Mind. I've not had the chance to speak about it yet, but I was a bit shocked they signed the new contract. I've mentioned on the show a few times, I didn't think he was a Rodgers type player. But the fact that he's the second player that Rodgers had tied up a new deal after the best, or one of the best players at the club, might be a bit of a controversial opinion saying that. But it's good that Rodgers is getting these players tied down because it shows that he knows who the important players are for his Celtic team, who he's going to build the squad around. He's building it around a Kyogo, a McGregor, a Maeda, and hopefully some of those guys in the tagline as well. So if I'm looking at those three, how long are their contract lengths? Do you know how long those guys have got left?
Well, we only signed Carter Vickers in the summer last season. And although I want to say 3 years, I would need to check on that. O'Reilly and Hatate similar when we signed them in that same January transfer window. So I would like to say 3 years on all three of them. I'll need to check that, James. But it's quite clear that these are three players who are going to be on the radars of many clubs this summer.
With the Sharks starting to circle around them, all the Hatate rumours I've been getting, quite a lot of fans, including myself, a bit nervous. So Celtic just tying some of these guys down, not only just to keep them at the club, but to ensure an even higher sell-on fee when we do eventually get rid of them, whenever that time comes. It can only be good for Celtic. Just build the foundations first, and then they can go and spend the money. As much as, like you said, Celtic fans were greedy. We want, some people call it greed, some people call it ambition. I prefer to call it ambition. We all want to see Celtic as good as they possibly can be, and this is just the start of it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that as well. I see it as ambition. When we're looking at these three players, Lawrence, you know, one guy who's not on that tagline is Leo Labada. There's been some speculation about his future at Celtic as well. Do you still expect to lose another one? And I mean, obviously, we've hit the jackpot in terms of the transfer fee for Jota, but there was this feeling, and I think that Angie's words were that one or two would likely leave this summer. Do you still expect to lose one top player?
I don't think we'll lose Cameron Carter-Vickers, just coming back from injury. I think Abada's probably the most likely to go. There's been rumours he's been unsettled for a while, isn't there? Looking at for a way out. If we lose them, as long as we get the right level of compensation for them and it's reinvested back in the squad, it wouldn't really bother me. Them moving on. That happens in football, isn't it? We buy players, we make a decent profit on them, and hopefully we're replacing them with somebody better. So if someone goes, I just think it means that we're bringing someone in, or another one in. Just when we're going to start bringing these players in.
Well, this is the thing though, because I don't like quality leaving Celtic, and it's mainly down to the fact that Jota's left, Lawrence. So you're saying we need to bring another one in. It's going to be hard to replace Jota, isn't it? Like for like, that's not an easy task.
Well, what did we pay for him? 6 million?
Just over, 6.5.
And we've got what, 25?
But we're not going to spend that on a new player, are we?
No, but we've got a fair amount of money to try and find someone similar to him. We wouldn't expect us to spend all 25, but we could spend more than 6.5 if we wanted. We identified somebody that fitted into our wage structure, and bring him in, improve them, sell them. We could do another Odds and Edward, buy for 9, sell for 20. Whatever. It's where we are. Rodgers has come in and said he's really impressed with the recruitment setup we've got.
Yeah.
So...
Well, that's one thing that's much better, Lawrence, as James was saying earlier. That's one thing that's much better than when he walked in the building first time round.
Yeah. So, with him saying that, if it's much better, surely it makes it easier for us to identify players than before, if it is much better. We've got to look at recent players we've signed. We've had a high success rate under Ange over the quality. It can't all be down to Ange. Part of the thing is we want a robust structure so when the manager moves, it doesn't affect every department.
Absolutely.
department can keep going. Tosh and team can keep identifying stars that we can afford to sign and improve at Celtic. You know, in 3 or 4 years'
How
time.
big is that team that Tosh is in? You keep talking about our pal Tosh McKinley. How big is that team? The scouting network, is it huge? I mean, they got scouts all over Europe and beyond. How does that work?
So I'm not too sure how big the Celtic team is, but they're going to be plugging into agents, and agents will be approaching them as well, isn't it? So I suppose it's a bit like mixed economy staffing. You know, some will be employed with Celtic, some be freelance, and some you're plugging into agencies or to see who the best they've got is. You know, so
you've just given me this vision of poor Tosh running about all over the place, jumping on planes.
I think Tosh never
No,
stopped.
he's not got any staff.
You know, I'm sure he's got a few, but I'm sure he never stops. Yeah.
That was somebody else's tagline. Talking of that, someone else's hairdo as well, James. What happens when Jota leaves? Do you cut off those beautiful locks? What do you do with them?
It's still there just now at the moment.
I thought it was a prime player tribute.
It was interesting when you were talking about Jota, you were talking how much we would spend on a replacement. Do you think, what do you think the most is Celtic could spend on like a Jota replacement? Do you think, I don't think Celtic could ever spend 25 million on a player just because wages a £25 million player would demand. Do you think the next step's like 12 million then? 13 million, something like that?
Well, I think you look at the work we put into Jota, that obviously resulted in him becoming a £25 million player. It was 2 years worth of work. And I think the club are far more likely to try, and I don't mean go on the cheap, because we've shown that we can buy a player for £1.5 million in Hatate, for example, who makes an incredible impression in the team. Matt O'Reilly's another example of that. And if those players, come to light in the scouting reports that Lawrence is talking about, I don't think we will delay in going out and buying them. The two guys that have come in so far, £1.5 million, £2.5 million. One of them might be the star man. You just never know how that's going to develop. So it's a difficult one, James. But I think Celtic fans, there's a lot of people. No, you're right. It's not the price tag.
The skills, we'll have a skill model.
The potential. Yeah, absolutely.
Whether we're interested, is he going to fit a model? Does he have the skills? What's the potential here?
So, if Celtic keep making money on signings, if we can move from buying 6 million players and flip them for 25 million up to buying an £11 million prospect and flipping them for 35 to 40 million, surely we just keep on that natural progression.
Yeah. I mean, I think we've seen a wee bit of that last year, didn't we? With Carter Vickers and Jota coming in for their prices.
Like
that was out the range. Yeah. It was out the range that we had used. Even though Starfelt and Kyogo had maybe been 4 to 4.5 million, it did seem as though we were pushing the envelope a wee bit further. What's your take on it, Liam? Because there is a clamour for us to spend all this money. If Jim Orr was on the show today, we'd be sweating at the thought of us spending all this money.
Well, I mean, okay, I'm biased in my view here. I'm not going to pretend to be otherwise. But when I look at the likes of the Australian market, the Korean market, the Japanese market, for 25 million, you could literally buy an entire team if you wanted to, right? An entire good quality team. So I don't think it's smart economics to spend all that money or a significant chunk of that money on one player. As James said, in the future we could build up to a point where instead of signing guys for 5 and 6 million and selling them for 25. It's 10 or 12 and we flip them for 30 or 40. The Saudis coming into this market have really kind of lit a fire under the English Premier League in the sense that they are no longer the biggest players in the game. So there does seem to be a kind of element of shell shock in England at the moment in terms of transfers. Nobody really knows what to do because whatever they try and buy, the Saudis might just step in and gazump them. So it has kind of brought in a kind of maybe a sense of a reevaluation across the entire transfer market. So I don't think it's good. I don't think it's smart money to spend 25 million on anybody at the moment, regardless of what team you are, because either the Saudis keep pumping in funny money and everything just spirals out of control, or, as I've been saying for years, the proverbial arse end is going to fall out of the English Premier League and there's going to be a massive reality check in the absurd fees that they pay down there. And either way, we don't want to be left holding the bag, having spent 25 million on a player that we then can't shift.
No, you're right. You're right. And again, that goes back to income streams, Liam. Goes back to income streams. They've got massive, lucrative income streams that we just cannot tap into. And I think that, on a smaller scale, when a club like Hearts or Rangers are selling their season tickets because there's a demand, you know what, in 3 years there might not be that demand, but you've already drawn a line in the sand with Celtic, who might not want to play ball with you in 3 years. And I just think it's kind of, looking at it from a business perspective, what you want is an income stream that's not a variable. It's a solid income stream every single season, and they're cutting them off. But you know what, as Lauren says, let's concentrate on Celtic if that's what they want to do. I'm really keen to get your thoughts on everything we're discussing. Gordon Coney, if Carter Vickers, Hatate and O'Reilly are to extend their contracts, it will show massive belief in Rodgers' vision for the season ahead. And to add real quality around these guys will put us on another level. I totally agree with that. I'm really gutted, unless someone can tell me otherwise, that tomorrow's game, even though it's just a kind of bounce game to get minutes and legs, James, I'm gutted that we won't be able to tune into that. In this day and age, in 2023, surely somebody over in Portugal can live stream that for us on their mobile phone.
Yeah, I think we had, was it a pre-season friendly against Rennes to start our last season, where all you were getting was score updates, and
That's
I
right.
think there was a video of Kyogo scoring from a corner or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure we'll get something very similar to that. I don't remember, I think Hearts had a friendly in Portugal last season that ended a massive brawl between them and the Portuguese team. And someone in the crowd by the side in the grass was just filming that. So hopefully they'll get a brawl. I don't really want to see any Celtic players getting hurt and something like that ahead of the new season.
Just send Iwata in, he'll sort it out.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's okay, Iwata to become the new Victor Wanyama and slam them off.
Absolutely. I mean, there's going to be Celtic fans there. There are always Celtic fans at these games. So if you are from Portugal and you fancy just live streaming that, then fine, just send us the link. Do it privately. We'll do it on the fly so we can watch it. Stephen Sloan, I think our squad is 38 players. We're talking about a bloated squad. We need to trim that big time. I think that's something that's going to be happening in the background as well. Slowly but surely players will start dropping off. We've seen it with Barkas, haven't we? I think the latest one, Conor Hazard, signing up for Plymouth Argyle as well. There was a chat yesterday about the Spurs press conference, the first press conference involving Ange Postecoglou, James. And I've got to admit, every news source today's ran with the story that obviously Rodgers was still in touch with him when he was manager down at Leicester and Ange was up here at Celtic. I'm over it. I'm not interested. I don't want to hear about Ange. I mean, very quickly.
Thank God you got there, mate.
Surprisingly, not as quickly as Lawrence, I'm completely over it. I mean, what's your thoughts? I just want to figure out what's happening this season. I want to focus on Brendan.
Yeah, when the Celtic I never had any sort of ill feeling towards, and generally I feel like I've been consistent with that over the last sort of month and a bit on the podcast. But I'm not surprised that Rodgers would have been in touch with him. If you imagine Rodgers is a Celtic fan, if he has the chance to get in touch with the Celtic manager and give him a couple of tips, I'm sure everybody, we all shout things in the stands at the games, do this, sub this guy on. If Rodgers has a chance to do that over a text message straight into the manager's phone, I'm sure he'll definitely be doing that. But Rodgers, he's a top quality manager. I'm sure Ange would have appreciated Rodgers getting in touch with him. And yeah, I don't hold any ill feeling towards Ange. There's nothing to really get over for me.
Well, you know this, I don't have any ill feeling, and I would like in a couple of seasons for us to draw Spurs in the Champions League and for us to get them a right good hammering, and Ange still to be at the helm there. But there is talk, Lawrence, about a Dublin friendly between Spurs and Celtic. Is this just paper talk? Is this nonsense? I've certainly not seen anything confirmed.
I'd seen something about a friendly same weekend as the All-Ireland final, and I was like, geez, try and get a hotel room in Dublin at the best of times, but if it's that weekend... So I'm not seeing anything confirmed, but I suppose we'd go there if it's commercially lucrative for us. Could see us doing it, but the weekend I saw mentioned was the All-Ireland weekend, and couldn't see it happening then. That's the thing, that'd be crazy.
Commercially lucrative, absolutely. In one sense, the fact that we did have a game set up, Liam, for that particular post-Japan leg of the tour, which has now been confirmed as cancelled. So it would be important to get a competitive game under your belt as well, wouldn't it?
Aye, good thing I didn't bother buying flights for that one.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing with the Spurs friendly, I don't think that's going to happen. I think that is just people, putting different elements together. So, Spurs are free that day, Celtic are free that day. So that will happen. As long as it doesn't make sense having an event in Dublin on the same day as the All Ireland final, right? Just that does not make sense. I don't see Spurs taking a particularly big crowd over to Ireland. I don't know if they're particularly well supported over there. Celtic, yes, we have a massive Irish support, but again, maybe not quite as big as it used to be. And I think, I don't. None of it adds up to me. It really doesn't. And I think it's still a bit too raw for some of the fans to have us facing off against Ange's team so soon after he's left. Even though I'm in full agreement with what James said, I wish Ange nothing but the best. I think throughout his entire career, he's come into clubs that were in turmoil and rebuilt them. And he rebuilt us into an absolute powerhouse. And for that, he'll always have my gratitude. And I'd love to have the privilege of buying him a pint someday.
Yeah. It's good for Celtic if he succeeds as well, because then it makes Celtic look a more attractive prospect for teams to shop in as well. We always talk about teams undervaluing Celtic players or undervaluing the Scottish League. But if a guy like Ange can go over and do great things with Spurs, then teams are going to want to pay a bit more money. The market for Celtic players, Celtic managers only goes up. You've got to think that.
I think it's a good point.
I'm really conflicted about that, though, because on one hand, I want Ange to do well because, like you say, it's good for Celtic's profile, and he himself seems like a good guy and deserves success. But the arrogance and the ignorance of those Spurs fans in the run-up to him going there, I want him to do well, but I want that team to get relegated, and I can't think of a reality where those two things can happen, unfortunately. So.
He'll do well. He'll get another move somewhere else, then they can get relegated, Liam. What do you think the take is then? Because obviously Rodgers left us for Leicester, Ange left us for Spurs, James. What is the kind of take on how Rodgers over the piece did at Leicester? Because we've had someone like Alan Morrison looking at his performance and pointing out the fact that the first 3 seasons were very, very good, all things considered. Is that because of the way the English game, where your stock is up and down so rapid that the success is forgotten about? Is Brendan Rodgers deemed to have been a failure at Leicester, didn't he?
I feel like if you look at over the course of it, if you take 3 good seasons, then 1 very bad season, does that automatically make it a horrible spell at Leicester? I feel like I don't know. I think Leicester getting 3 top 5 finishes in a row at an FA Cup. I think it was their first FA Cup in a very long time as well. Plus, they made some star players as well at the club that would make the club a lot of money. James Maddison went for, I think it was around 40 to 50 million. There's a lot of the players that he identified. We've spoke about some of the players that he identified that didn't work out, but there's also the players that he built the spine of the team around that succeeded as well, like your Madisons, your Ndidis. So I think you would have to look at it as a whole. Say, as much as the ending wasn't very good, the first few years were great. I think you can coincide that with him getting less money as well. I think they only signed 1 player in that summer transfer window, which was the season they got relegated. And you can look at the Celtic team, as much as the success was still there, the playing style on the pitch did start to tail off at the same time where the money started to dry up and they weren't spending as much money on Brendan Rodgers. So there's some very similar parallels there between Celtic and Leicester, but ultimately the Premier League is more of a competitive league where if you don't spend, others are going to spend and leapfrog you. And that's just ultimately what happened to Leicester at the end of the day.
Yeah, no, you're right. Stephen Ray, welcome back to the show, Stephen. Donny van de Beek made his Ajax debut off the bench at Celtic Park in the 2015-16 Europa League. Nice stat. Unfortunately, he's got 2 years left on a 120 grand a week deal at Manchester United. We've also got Kevin Mullen in on the chat. Afternoon, Acsom. Get O'Reilly, Carter Vickers and Hatate signed up on new deals. Another couple of seasons with us and sell them on for mega money. Absolutely. I mean, just like we've been talking about, you're bringing in a player for, in Hatate and O'Reilly's case, £1.5 million each, which is just astonishing business. And if you can then turn that into a massive, sale, then great. Not just this summer. We want to get them signed up first. Pete McGee, Charlie Tully, one of my boyhood heroes along with Willie Fernie. What was your thoughts, Pete, on Neely Mokin, who obviously before my time, but a favourite of mine, also an NP MSCO. NP MSCO. There we go. Iwata is 1.78 metres, Liam, 5'10". There you go. He's Googled it. He's no 6 feet. So,
I mean, are we really going to split hairs over 5 centimetres? I mean, clearly we are. Just don't ever compare any player to Paul McStay, or you're in for it, especially if you're on social media. But talking of which, this is a nice wee link if you get it. But David Turnbull, there's not much mention of David Turnbull in this pre-season, James. And I look at him, he turned 24. I think it was yesterday, actually, he turned 24. What does the future hold for David Turnbull?
Yeah, I've sort of been championing him when I was hosting the show. I was trying to make sure the fans don't forget about him. He sort of, when you look at when he broke through at Celtic, it's easy to look good amongst a team that's playing absolutely terrible. In a pitch black room, if you're a shining light, you know it's going to stand out. And that's what Turnbull did. It was just the injury, the poor timing around it that sort of started the free fall of his Celtic career. Not to do with any bad performances. I don't think David Turnbull's come on and he's started a game and I'm thinking this guy needs to get subbed off. I'm thinking, why have we brought this guy on? I've never had anything like that towards David Turnbull. It's the sort of thing where someone's out the team for a bit too long, fans sort of automatically start to think that they're not very good. Whereas we know Turnbull's quality. I remember before Ange came in, he was getting a decent run in the Scotland team as well before the Euros.
Yeah.
A friendly game, so he started. I think he scored in one as well. So Turnbull, he's definitely a good player. He's a quality player. Whether his future is at Celtic or it's somewhere else, we need to wait and see.
We know that Rodgers likes to take a player on, kind of rebuild his confidence, Lawrence, develop him. He's got the youth on his side, certainly. He's shown, as James said, that he can do a job. I often felt in a game sometimes he wasn't involved enough, but he was always capable of pulling something out, from distance often. I thought there was a wee period last season where he came on as a substitute and he was making an impression. He was setting up goals. He got a few goals as well. What's your take on David Turnbull, Lawrence? Do we keep him? Does he develop under Brendan? Can he be a big part of this season?
If we're going to keep him, we'll need to sign a new contract. His contract's running down. So I don't think he's going to be athletic enough or fast enough to play the pressing football. I think that's where he struggled under Ange. The intensity that Ange wanted his team to play at. Does he really have the change of play pace as well? I'm not too sure. Yeah, he scores for distance. He's a decent footballer. He's looked good in some games. As you said, coming off the bench, playing against tired teams, he looked better. But I don't think his future's at Celtic. And if it's going to be at Celtic, we need to be getting tied down on another contract because I think he's got 2 years left now, doesn't he? So if we keep him for a year, at the end he's got a year left, you're leaving yourself in a dangerous situation.
Yeah. I mean, he's the type of player, Liam, if you're looking at his career and being selfish as a footballer, you might have one eye on all these guys going over to Italy and doing well, players who, for me, not one of the guys that's gone over there from Scottish football has got the talent or the potential talent of a David Turnbull. I mean, I know that Hickey plays left back and he's came back and all the rest of it, but of the midfielders, let's say, I don't think any of them would have laced David Turnbull's boots.
No, but the thing is, from Turnbull's point of view, he's also going to be looking at how well Scotland are doing just now and thinking, I want some of that action.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, he's not going to get that while he's on the Celtic bench. I think there are players getting a game for Scotland just now that Turnbull is better than. I think that's not up for debate. But those guys are playing first-team football every week for their respective clubs, so the manager is obviously going to pick them. Mm-hmm. So Turnbull needs to either force his way into that Celtic team, which is a hell of a task, especially in midfield. As you say, that is our most stacked our most stacked area of the park at the moment is the midfield. And Turnbull, I really think he's going to struggle to get a look in. And Scotland are a year away from hopefully going to the Euros again. If I was him, I'd be looking at going to a mid-level English team, playing every week and forcing his way back into that Scotland squad.
It's going to be interesting to see if he's still in a Celtic jersey. The B team certainly will be, and the Urban Coaches came up with a good idea. I will get a sneak preview of the B team wearing the new kit. At this point, I will give it my assessment. I've already gone right in, studs up, and I'm not a fan. Urban Culture will wearing it in the B team game against Sligo. Rovers changed my mind. I don't know. We'll need to wait and see. Listen, thanks everybody for getting involved on the Tuesday Bulletin. 1,000 strong this afternoon. It's been fantastic. Loads more, I'm sure, to come this week and in the coming weeks of this pre-season. I've got to thank everybody for getting involved in the chat. The chat rages on, even though James, Liam and Lawrence and myself are chatting away. I've got an eye on the chat and it's fantastic to see. If you enjoy what we're doing, give us a follow, subscribe to us on YouTube, give us a thumbs up on the video as well. And our next event is up at the end of this month. It's with Roy Aitken, one from my era. Big Roy, he had a hairdo like that a wee bit as well in the 80s. Everybody did, James. Roy Aitken, the Bear. And obviously, I will be asking him questions on stage at Barra's Art and Design at the end of this month. There are some tickets available. The link is underneath the video. Come along, say hello to some of the Acsom troops. One of these days, Liam, we'll get you over for Japan for one of these gigs, or indeed you can invite us over there and we might just bring the road show over to Japan as well. Thanks everybody for getting involved, and thank you to James, Liam and Lawrence for joining me on A Celtic